Hello, children. We were reading the chapter 0 Hour. Till now, we have read that John Kendall was a famous scientist and he was working on a secret project. His son Bobby somehow knew about the project because he had discovered the secret path to the drone. One day, he heard his father and a scientist discussing about the rocket and the secret mission to the moon. Now, let's read the story to see what happened next. He had known now for 3 days that at 4 o'clock the roof would open and the drone would be turned into a blast pit, and the rocket would shoot out through space to the moon. Blast pit means a hole in the ground where an explosion takes place. So Bobby heard about it 3 days back, and he knew that at 4 p.m. that day the rocket would be going to the moon. That was all he did know for sure. Neither of the men had said who was going on the first trip to the moon, but Bobby knew father would go. He would have to. After all, father was the second biggest scientist at Buffalo Flats, second only to Professor Schleimer himself, who was very old and wouldn't make the trip. That left father. There probably wasn't anybody else smart enough to go on this mission. Bobby's father and the scientist hadn't revealed that who would be going to the moon first. But Bobby thought that his father would be the one, as he knew his father was the second biggest scientist in Buffalo Flats and presumed he would surely be the first man on the moon. As he admired his father a lot, he thought no other scientist on the project would be fit to fly to the moon. The idea of going himself had been born the previous day, when he found a larger grating in the floor near the rocket and realized that if he was very careful, he could climb out of the sewer and duck into the rocket when nobody was looking. Once inside, he was quite sure he would find a place to hide until blast off. At first, thinking about it, he had been scared. But after he realized how proud his parents would be, he made up his mind. So Bobby had discovered a large grating near the rocket, and he knew that he could get out of the sewer and into the rocket when no one was looking. So at first, he was nervous, but then he decided to go when he thought of how proud his parents would be. So Bobby was making a secret plan to board the rocket. Taking a deep breath, he opened the grating and got out. It was only 4 steps to the open port of the rocket. There was a little ramp they had used to roll things in, and Bobby's feet touched it lightly as he jumped into the ship. He found himself in some kind of a storeroom. It would be a good place to hide all night. All right. It was full of aluminum barrels, all the same size. He found a space between 2 rows and sat down and got his breath back. It was very quiet around him, scary quiet. But he set his lips firmly. He was going to the moon with father. So, knowing that Bobby could board the rocket by using the grating which was near that room, he got into the rocket using a ramp to get in. There he found himself in a storeroom kind of place with barrels of the same size, and he sat among them, waiting for the blast off. He felt scared at first, but gathered courage knowing that his father would be going to the moon with him. So Bobby boarded the rocket. He sat inside the rocket on the day when it was supposed to take off. Kendall was a little late that night. He greeted his wife and said, "Well, Myra, did you see the big skyrocket?" As per the Bobby, John Kendall was supposed to board the rocket, but John Kendall was back to his home that night. He was a little late, but he reached his home and he asked his wife about the big rocket which they had planned to send to the moon. How could I miss it, dear? Your supper is in the oven. To which his wife replied that yes, of course, she saw the rocket. John lay back in his easy chair and closed his eyes. We had hoped to stage a little ceremony at the launching, but Washington said no. Washington said simply light the fuse and fire the thing. Washington here refers to the government of the USA. Is it still a big secret? No, not between you and me at least. We fired an explosion rocket at the moon. It will hit in about an hour and telescopes will show a big purple spot when our explosives go off and throw dye all over the place. So, because John Kendall didn't reveal much about the project, so his wife was knowing that there was something important on which he's working upon, but she was not quite sure that what was that thing or why he was working upon that project. So she asked her husband about the secret. So then John revealed the details about the rocket and said that it was an explosion rocket that would throw dye which telescopes would capture as a purple spot, and with that spot scientists would come to know that the rocket had reached the destination. I see. Lots of fun, no doubt. But what's the purpose? 4th of July on the moon? Bobby's mother then inquired if all that was done because of 4th of July. 4th of July is actually the Independence Day of the USA, which is celebrated with great pomp and show. So she thought that the government might be thinking of celebrating their Independence Day by sending a rocket to the moon. Oh no, if the experiment is a success, the next rocket will carry men instead of a bomb. So Bobby's father replied that if the mission was successful, then the next rocket would carry human beings. So the purpose was not to celebrate 4th of July, but it was just to see the success of the mission. Myra went to the kitchen to see about supper. John called, "Where's Bobby?" "In bed, I suppose." John moved toward the bedroom. Maybe he was still awake. Bobby rolled over. His eyes popped open. "Dad, I thought you went to..." So John went to Bobby's room to chat with him. He was awake because John wasn't aware that Bobby had planned to board the rocket. So he inquired about Bobby, and at the same time, Bobby had an impression that his father would also be going to the moon. So when he saw his father, he was quite surprised. Popped open means suddenly he opened his eyes and he was quite surprised to see his father over there. John Kendall sat down on the edge of the bed and tousled his son's hair. "No, son, it's the old terra firma for me. Did you see the rocket blast?" Tousled means to make hair untidy by rubbing them lovingly. So he lovingly rubbed his son's hair and then said, "No, edge over here means corner." So he replied to his son that no, I hadn't gone anywhere. It's the old terra firma for me. Terra firma here means dry land. Terra firma actually means dry land. And here it means that Bobby's father didn't like being on a land, didn't like being in water or in air, but he loved to be on land. Means he didn't wish to go anywhere else. So he said, no, it's the old terra firma for me means I like my land a lot. So I don't want to go anywhere else. Did you see the rocket blast? Then he asked his son, if he saw that blast. Uh-huh. It was really something. It went to the moon, didn't it? Bobby replied that he saw it and he knew that it was something very important for his father. That's right, John smiled and thought. Try to keep a secret from the children. It just can't be done. How is your moon rocket coming along, son? John smiled at his son's answer and thought that nothing can be kept a secret from children as they get to know about everything. So, as per John, Bobby shouldn't be knowing anything about the mission, but he was quite surprised to listen about that thing from John, from Bobby, sorry. Pretty good. Gee, Dad, as long as you didn't go, I am glad I didn't go either. Gee here depicts an expression of surprise or happiness. So he told his father that he was happy that he didn't board the rocket like his father. You were planning to make the trip too? Then John asked if Bobby was also planning to go to the moon. Uh-huh. I got into the rocket and was all set, but I got to thinking about Mom. How one of us should stay and take care of her in case anything happened. Bobby told that he decided to come back because at the last moment he realized that if both he and his father went away, there would be no one to take care of his mother. Smart thinking, son. Now you get to sleep. I will have a little time tomorrow. We will play some ball. That will be fun. So John appreciated the thought without realizing that it was he who did not know that Bobby had actually been inside the rocket. And he thought that the boy had only imagined it. Realizing that John had been too preoccupied with the project, he decided to spend time with his son. And so he offered to play ball with him the next day. John Kendall smiled as he left the bedroom. Children were wonderful. Give them a few old boards and a steering wheel, and they could build a ship to fly to the moon. What a wonderful dream world they lived in. Too bad they had to grow out of it. So John didn't realize that Bobby was actually telling the truth. And just thinking it as a child's play, he left the room. So, children, in this story, 0 hour refers to the specific moment when the explosive rocket was launched from Buffalo Flats to the moon. It also refers to Bobby growing up in two ways. First, in actually finding a way to get into the rocket, thinking that he was flying with his father, and the other way was giving up that excitement to take care of his mother while his father was away. So it was a 0 hour in Bobby's life when he grew up to be a responsible boy. So that's all in the story. Thank you very much. Stay at home, stay safe.